I'm Gemma Lonsdale, psychic medium and life coach, and you're listening to the Happy Psychic podcast. And on today's show, we have Shelley Knight.
Hi there, Gemma.
Hello, welcome to the show. It's very, very good to have you here. Now, Shelley is a positive change expert, and she helps people through, positive changes with her written and spoken word. She has a YouTube channel, podcast, books, coaching program, lots and lots and lots of different things. So I'm absolutely delighted to have her on the show today, and we're going to discuss about how loss can lead to spiritual awakening. And I guess that's loss really that isn't just grief, of losing a person. It's the loss of a relationship or the loss of any part of our lives or part of our bodies or whatever it might be. So yes, I know that Shelley, you have your own spiritual awakening story.
Yeah, so my spiritual awakening did come through like the loss of a loved one. I must say, it's my beautiful stepdad died.
Mm-hmm.
As you say, there's been other losses in my life, like a fertility journey, or where you lose your identity, or you think, oh my God, I'm 24, 49, and all those milestones, and you just think, what am I doing with my life? But yeah, a lot of who I am today has come from those curveballs and the poo hitting the fan. It wasn't from sitting on a yoga mat meditating or anything beautiful like that.
Yeah.
So for me, it was back in my clinical days. I work in education now, but back in my clinical days as a nurse, I was working one day on the wards when my mum phoned to say that, my beautiful stepdad had died. And it wasn't in that moment that the spirituality came. In fact, it's been going on for like the 17 years since he passed. But I think when we hit rock bottom and don't just hand and glaze over it and try and heal in that moment, I think when we actually sit in the rawness and the silence, that these moments come and we can sense sort of spirit or more aware of our own body, and messages start to arrive, and so many things. I mean, it was Badger Di, my beautiful stepdad, but it's also infertility.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working in a hospital as a nurse when I was 20 weeks pregnant with what would have been, it was like my 39th, 40th year. And to cut a very long story short, we was told to terminate at 20 weeks. And I'd had a vision of a girl to come for a good 18 months, 2 years. And it just was like unwavering, recurring. I just couldn't shake it. And when I was told to terminate in a clinical setting, I couldn't. I've had so many losses, and I just kind of had this really bad success rate. I was more likely to miscarriage than actually take this baby home. So I kind of pivoted, door slammed on the clinical setting, and then thought, well, if they're not going to take a chance on me and my child, I'm just going to try anything, because I've had this vision for years. That's a spiritual thing. Let's just run with that. And that was my sort of loss of, like a safe pregnancy. To just try everything spiritual. And she's amazing. She made it. There is a happy ending. So clinically, I was told to terminate her. Spiritually, that I'd try it all. And so I had like Reiki. I'd reach out to Badger in spirit. I'd have mediumship readings, work with chakras, read books on miracles, yoga, meditation, visualization. I tried everything spiritual because clinically I was told there's nothing they could do for us. And so that's how I sort of went from the clinical into the spiritual sort of setting.
I'm just getting chills.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, I have such a profound, being a psychic medium, my whole life is really based on my spirituality. Now, it hasn't always been the case. I had a similar past you where I had, a loss, not a loss of a person as in grieving, but I had like the tower moments, the catastrophic things that happened that sort of pushed me down this path. But I just think whenever we're on this spiritual journey, we get to the stage where we just have such a profound faith and trust that can override everything that's logical in this world that we know. So in that clinical setting, you were being told, no, this is it. There's no chance, give up hope. And your faith and your spirituality was what kept pushing you on and, made you trust that actually this can have a happy ending. And I just find that so amazing and heartwarming, to be honest. I'm near in tears. whenever I hear stories like that of, you know, people really embracing their faith in a higher power and, you know, dismissing whatever information they're given in the real world, I love it. I get really excited about that. Because I trust the higher power more than what I would trust anybody around me in human form. And I would trust the higher power more than science. You know, if I'm given information, I'm listening to spirit. I'm not listening to the doctor. But that's the part of my journey that I'm on. So it is really good to hear that you had, you know, such a positive outcome.
Yeah, and for anyone listening, I wasn't really into spirituality. I probably owned a pack of tarot cards and had about 10 crystals. That was it. That's me being spiritual. And so it was a huge leap of faith. But I think because I was rock bottom, unless I did a leap, I'd have stayed on rock bottom, you know, and gone with the medical. And now, like when I look at my complete family, thank God I trust my intuition, that vision, you know, because you can think you're going mad sometimes when you embrace spirituality, can't you?
Yeah.
You know, because I'd had this vision for 18 months, but actually I'd had the vision probably for about 4 years, but I went on to have like a blonde haired boy in between.
Yeah.
And so this, as I said, the vision kept coming, but I wasn't what I'd say a spiritual person at the time. I was just this, you know, mum desperate to become a mum for the last time at the age of 40. So sometimes, you know, it's not sort of like dipping your foot into spirituality. Sometimes you literally have to throw yourself and just hope the universe catches you.
Hey, like I'm getting so emotional just because like I didn't expect to get teary. I don't have any tissues next to me or anything. My mascara is my mascara is gonna ruin everything. Oh my gosh. So I'm turning 39 at the end of this month, and I keep getting told about a baby boy to come. And I've been told this probably for about 3 years now. And I'm like, oh, so it's just wonderful hearing your story come to fruition, because I do think to myself sometimes, gosh, like, you know, when is he coming? Like, where is he going to come? Like, you know, because, you know, obviously we have our fertility to think about, and, you know, our, oh, I don't think I've cried on a podcast before. This is a first. This is a first for me. But yeah, you know, we have our, you know, biological clocks and everything to think about as well, you know, and my guide just had said to me, like, don't be worrying about it. It doesn't matter. You know, it will happen when it's supposed to happen. So, you know, they keep reassuring me that this is destined and it's set to occur. So I'm just having faith at the minute.
Yeah, see, I was 39 when I fell pregnant with Daisy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and it's Year of the Rabbit. If you're into Chinese astrology, it's the year of fertility. And if you wanted a baby, this is the year.
Yeah. Okay.
Can't think it sounds like a pun, but if you wanted a baby, you had to do it. But I thought that's not going to come out right, is it?
Oh dear, no, that's brilliant. It's so good to hear like how positive your journey come, because it's really hard. And I think, you know, whenever we have the different losses and things like that in life, like for me, what pushed me down my spiritual awakening, sorry, I'm just gathering myself, composing myself. I had separated from my daughter's dad. So we had just separated, but I was still living in his house, about to move out whenever I found out that I had cancer. So that it was all of that that really pushed me down. And it's funny that you mentioned about, you know, sitting in the rawness of it and feeling it, and I was really reluctant to do that. You know, I was very, at the time, very like, you know, everything's fine, everything's tickety-boo, I can move past this, I'm positive, you know, think positive. But I think that what we forget sometimes is that we can be positive and still feel what we're going through. Whereas I was really repressing the emotions and everything down, and I didn't want to feel the rawness of it. And it took so many different things to then occur that actually I had no choice. It sort of just erupted in me, and I had no choice but to just sit with it. And I can remember I would have come home from work. I don't even know how I continued to work through it, to be honest, thinking back, but I would have been at work on autopilot, and I would have, I was in the corporate world at the time, and I would have come home and I just would have sat crying all evening for like, and this went on for ages. But I understand, obviously, it was all of this stuff coming to the surface, and I was processing, you know, all this trauma. But I think that we do gloss over sometimes, or sometimes appearance of this, spiritual awakening or this spiritual journey is all love and light, but it's
Yeah.
hard. It's really hard, really hard.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan of the ugly crying and snot. I just think like get it out.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I always think, I'm feisty now. If anything, from the Daisy journey, the pregnancy that I shared earlier, some people say I didn't have a filter in the first place, Jim. I think I had a gesture of a filter, but now I'm just like, I don't care. But I just think ugly cry, snot, speak your truth, get
Yeah.
it all out. I was a chemotherapy nurse for most of my nursing career. And I've shared this before, that when I used to sit there on a one-to-one with these ladies with breast cancer, they're kind of like a captive audience because I've got all the tubes in that, and I'm delivering the cytotoxic medicine. And they would just share and speak their truth for decades from childhood. And they would literally say, I'm so glad I got that off my chest. And it stuck with me so much about the amount of CRAP we carry. Always speak your truth. And it doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't mean it is the truth. It's how you understand it. So
Yeah.
always do the ugly cry and get it off your chest. Speak your truth. Be raw. Don't keep anything in. Because I always had this really bizarre vision. Like when we suppress things, it comes up later in life. So if you have one loss, don't deal with it. When you have a little loss, you'll lose the plot. And you think, why? It's because, energetically, it's all the losses before that. And it's like, whack-a-mole by the seaside where like you try and whack down a mole, one pops up. That's what happens when you don't deal with the losses in your life. You're just literally knocking it down, not dealing with it, and it will always come back up. And get it out the body, get it out your mouth, out the chakra, off the chest, always,
I always envisage the the negative energy and those repressed emotions sort of festering inside of us. And I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Hay, but one of her philosophies was that it sort of came out in a different way. It manifested itself physically. But I've always been a little bit skeptical of some of that. But on the other hand, I also have experienced profound anxiety at times, and I don't suffer from anxiety a lot, but over Christmas, actually, over the Christmas period, I suffered from a bit of anxiety, and I could really feel it in my stomach, and I could really, really feel it. And it was from something that I had been holding in, and the effect that it actually had on my stomach and my digestive system, the discomfort I was in, the pain it caused me, and it really made me aware. It was the first time probably in my life that I have been so aware of the mind, body, soul connection.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Just the discomfort, and it made me realize as well, how in tune I am with my body these days compared to maybe what I would have been years ago. And probably like you, I'm at no means by the at the end of my journey. I still got a lot to go. It'll be forever moving as I go through life, but it's certainly at this stage, it really did made me, it just made me aware of the connection there. And I was so aware of the sensations that I was feeling in my body. And on one hand, I was like, oh, this is awful. But on the other hand, I was like, how amazing is this? And I can feel all of this, and I'm noticing the connection, and it was really good.
Yeah, see, I love Louise Hay, and you're the happy psychic, so I can say it on your show about people thinking, what on earth? She stepped in as a spirit guide for me for a while.
Did she?
Before Good Grief came out, she stepped in. So I thought, oh, I'm gonna, because she obviously founded Hay House. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to get a Hay House book deal because it's Louise Hay. And I don't think it was that at all. She just stepped in to make sure the book, was birthed out into the world.
Yeah.
And I do love her stuff. Like, as you say, I do disregard some of it. And that's what I say in life. If it's not for you, disregard it. But
exactly.
When it is like you feel in your stomach, it is often about having the guts to say something or having the guts to do something. So I do actually like that part of her work.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. I really enjoyed her book, and there's actually a very good friend of mine. She's she's certified and everything, Louise Hay, and that's really where she focuses a lot of her work. And she I think she never met Louise, but she had went and done I think it was somebody that had been trained directly by Louise, and she spent a lot of time with her, and she swears by Louise's stuff. And it was funny because for years, and this is like how the synchronicities and everything work, which I think is amazing as well. But there had been a woman that I had worked with years ago. This was probably going back maybe 10 years ago now. And she kept saying to me about this book, Heal Your Life. She says, you need to get this book. She had worked in LA for years, and she'd done the therapy and everything. And she said, this book will change your life. And I never ever bought it. And it was only whenever my life started falling apart, when you're grasping at straws, like,
Yeah.
well, what can I do to help me? And I read the book and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I can understand why. But it was the universe leading me to all of this stuff, probably trying to help prepare me to, maybe avoid the disasters rather than
Yeah.
me trying to, put the balls back together. Let's try and avoid shattering it in the first place. But I do love how things like that come into play. We'll always be guided to the right things along our journey.
Yeah, and it's like I was saying earlier, like in life, take time to sit in the rawness and take time to sit in the silence. We're so busy, we can't see the beautiful synchronicities and the signs and the messages and the paths and that. So
Yeah.
slow down, slow down.
Indeed. And how was it for you whenever you were at the start of your journey? I know it's going back quite a long time now, but you'd mentioned about, hearing things and things starting to come to you, but did that happen like quite quickly for you? Or was there a lot of weird things that, what was it like, really, I guess is the question.
Yeah, so it was just slow. Like even after Badger died, my beautiful stepdad, it was just raw grief for many, many years. And then I started to sort of like try things, and every year I choose a word, and this year's curiosity. But going back then, I was really curious. So I'd like go and try a mediumship circle, or I'd try this modality. And again, when we're open to it, because if you know nothing about something, you can't really make judgment, can you? It just is what it is. And so I went along, and then I could, for the first time in years, I could hear my dad talking to me. I could sense him around me and things like that. But it was years after his death. But as we said earlier, it generally comes from the muckiness. It's, like you can do some amazing guided meditations and get insight, but generally it is those times when you're thinking, why do I bother? Am I bending? Am I breaking? Where you have it. But it comes and goes. I won't see spirit for years, and I might think, thank goodness for that, that's really spooky. And then other times, I might hear someone, sense someone, just know something.
Yeah.
It comes and goes, but it's when I slow down that I'm aware of it.
Yeah. I would completely. I think it's probably a bit different to me because I'm using it every day anyway, because that's what, that's what I do for a living now. But I was once a skeptic, and I think that, so whenever I'd had my daughter, I was told, I'd went to a clairvoyant for the very first time, and she had told me that I was clairvoyant and that I was that I just hadn't tapped into it. And I thought she was so rubbish. I just thought if I had this gift, I would know about it. And I just thought, no, this is just rubbish. I just didn't take it on board at all. And it was whenever I started then going through my spiritual awakening, obviously, that things really started to click into place for me. But I actually can remember a time, because obviously everybody's journey is completely different. Our journeys are as bespoke and unique as what we are. But I can remember starting to experience things, and I actually was starting to get really worried. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm having a psychotic episode, because I hadn't really started to hear or see spirit at that point. What I was getting was a lot of external validation, like the synchronicities, messages from other mediums, because like you, I had started to get involved in a spiritualist church and a development circle, even though I wasn't really receiving information, or maybe I was, and I was just too closed off to it at that point, but I wasn't aware of receiving information. I was feeling the energy shift. If I was in the spiritual group, I could really feel the energy shift, and I could feel my ears tingling and, all these different sensations. But there was nothing that I could have said was communication from a person. I wasn't hearing, seeing anything like that. And what actually happened was, there was one night I was actually thinking to myself, maybe I actually just need medical help. You know, I was that worried and concerned for myself.
No.
And I find it a very, very lonely time going through all of that and opening up to spirit and having that spiritual awakening. It was incredibly lonely. And I think that we often forget, well, I think we aren't aware sometimes of, you know, what the good that can come from being lonely. And actually it's almost like it's like a rite of passage almost, to feel that solitude and that loneliness and to feel different to everybody else, because we've been sort of conforming to society and what people expect of us for all these years. And all of a sudden we're starting to decide and realize that there's something different that maybe sits outside of that. And that was quite hard, I think, to come to terms with for me. You know, the whole people looking at me differently, and you know, people who had known me my whole life, like my family members, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, you know, I seen a spirit. I've had somebody talk to me. My grandmother's talking to me, and they're a bit like, you know, this is a bit strange. But I generally, you know, as a person, I always wanted to be accepted. That was a big thing for me. I wanted to be accepted by people. So I find it very hard even discussing the spiritual experiences, because I was worried about not being, you know, accepted by, you know, the general population, by people at work, by my family members, by my friendship circle. Like, was that an issue for you? Is that something that came up with you?
Yeah, I think, you know, when we look back on our life, we realise, you know, that the lessons are there. And Daisy, as she's known now, she was Hope as the bump,
Yeah.
has been my biggest learner, like learning journey, my biggest lesson. And it flipped me into, I think, who I was destined to be all along.
Yeah.
And so up to the age of like 39, I don't know if I always seek people's approval. My husband will say definitely not. But I was like this closet spiritual person.
Yeah.
You know, I was doing the tarot card readings. I got the Kuan Yin sort of like, you know, statues and all the books and the crystals and the feathers and the sage. I've got all that. But it's kind of thing that my family accepted, as in like my husband, my 4 children think that's normal. But it's only after the Daisy journey, because I thought if I didn't have spirituality, I probably would have committed suicide, if I'm quite honest. Do you know what I mean? I had
Yeah.
that semicolon moment. I got a really ridiculously handsome husband, really gorgeous kids, but I had this time bomb, this time bump, and it wasn't quite enough at times to hold me on this earthly plane.
Yeah.
So I think because spirituality saved me and saved Daisy, I really didn't care anymore what people thought. You know, for me, it was unlearning the first 39 years of my life and then learning what worked for me. And so I didn't really care what people thought of me, but I did sort of really open. So I started a new job back in September 2022. And it's like, oh, here's my witchy photo shoot for my year ahead. And I don't care, because that's who I am. And I wish I'd have known it when I was 16, I guess, Gemma. But it's just sort of like, you know, so many of us go through life trying to learn to like ourselves. Just worry about that, like learn to like yourself. And we can't
Yeah.
please everyone. Not everyone's meant to like us. As long as we like ourselves, let's be brave, let's love ourselves, that's enough. You can't get
Yeah.
everyone's approval, and I'd rather be myself, because I know how to do that. And everyone else can fall away, and if you're with me, you're with me. You know, I've got the most amazing support network, quality not quantity. But, you know, I can say like, oh, Spirit's here this morning. Oh, I spoke to Badger this morning. This is my tarot card for the week ahead. And I was like, oh, you know, what was it? What does it mean? And, you know, I'm into Chinese astrology. And it's just like, you know, because I worked at end of life quite a lot as a
Yeah.
chemotherapy nurse. And it's, you know, at the end of your days, they used to say, live your life, not someone else's version of it. Because, you know, like your family wants you to inherit that business, they want you to be that thing. You know, the amount of times I've been asked, when am I going to get a proper job, because I'm an author and not a nurse. But it is my proper job, I love it, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
be
crazy, isn't it?
you.
I always think that like the being comfortable in our own skin always comes with the authenticity. You know, whenever we finally realize that we can just dismiss other people's views of us, and we can, you know, just shed those limiting beliefs. And it took me a while to get there, to be honest. You know, on the spiritual journey, I was very much a closeted spiritual person, a closeted psychic. I had started doing tarot readings and things like that on the side, because that's how I started, was with the tarot. And they had really sort of, you know, using the cards had really helped me develop my connection. But I had a separate sort of Instagram page and Facebook page for it, and I wasn't using my photograph. I didn't want to be associated with it because I was mortified at
Yeah.
those people that were within my network at that time to realize like who I was. It was like I was embarrassed about it, but I was so fearful of, you know, not being accepted, and them thinking, oh, like, what is she up to now? You know, rolling the
Yeah.
eyes. And actually, whenever I found my comfort zone and my authenticity with that, and I just was accepting of myself fully, I was so much less interested in what other people thought. And that I find that really, really powerful. And I always preach that to people, you know, if you're going to do this hidden away, you need to fully accept yourself first. It doesn't matter what other people say, but once you fully accept yourself, you'll find it so much easier to speak your truth, to speak out. You'll feel so different, but in a positive way. It'll be much, much better for you.
Yeah, only a few years ago, someone said to me, "What other people think of you is none of your business." And I love that. I was like, "Oh yeah," you know, because I get judged all the time, and I'm just like, "Okay, I'd
Yeah.
rather you looked at your life than mine, but okay, you know."
Yeah, exactly. And there's always going to be people, you know, there's always going to be people that have judgments and that disagree with what you're doing, or think you should be doing something different, or think they could
Yeah,
do it better. But it's like Brené Brown said, you know, it's like you're in the arena. Like, those people are sitting on the sidelines there in the bleachers watching. They're not even taking part half the
yeah,
time, you know. So at least you're there, you're taking part, you're doing your thing. And like you say, you know, people will come with you. You know, whoever is meant to be with you on your journey will come with you, and the rest of them will fall away. And that's fine. You know, you don't need to be accepted by everyone. Definitely
no,
not. Definitely
yeah.
not. Yeah.
In 2022, I let go of the word should, because I thought, you know, I should keep in contact with that person because they're there during the Daisy Print. I should keep in contact with them because it's a family member. And I was like, where did this story come from?
Uh,
Where did I think I should live my life with shoulds? You know, this duty to others. And I'm like, you know, relationships are a two-way thing. Even if in a shop doing shopping, you know, you speak to the cashier, they speak back to you. And I was carrying all these people out of a sense of some unknown duty, and I let go of the shoulds. And the most beautiful synchronicities followed, that then these people that I was sort of like chasing to have the friendship, chasing because they're a family member, either fell away or they
mm-hmm.
started communicating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something energetically happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if they're meant for you, they'll come with you. But if not, you know, lighten the load and just move forward anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. So, like, what sort of advice would you give to somebody who is starting to recognize that they're having a bit of a spiritual awakening, and that they're on a bit of a spiritual journey then at the starting stages? Because that's where I find, for me personally, was the scariest, and the so much uncertainty there, I think, for me.
Yeah, I say KISS, keep it so simple, because I think life's quite complex anyway. So KISS, I'm a real advocate for writing things down. So whether it's a diary, journaling, doodling, just get a notebook dedicated to your spirituality and diarize when something happens, you know, like what I write down every day, what my tarot card was for the day. I would highly recommend sitting in silence for 10 minutes a day, whether you're going through grief or just in life itself, and sit in the silence, you know, put out an intention to connect with an angel, put out, you know, an intention, like we said earlier, to what's going on in your body, but just 10 minutes a day, you know, out of the 24 hours, it's doable. So yeah, keep it simple, just write it down, 10 minutes, and just see what comes up for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite a brave thing to do. It doesn't sound like a lot, but silence with yourself for 10 minutes can be, you know, quite deafening, shall
Yeah.
we say.
And it's one thing that we really don't do a lot of, is that, you know, we always have
Mm.
so many distractions, like, you know, social media, television. And what I found actually, whenever I was going through my spiritual journey, was sound actually at one point was almost unbearable for me. The thoughts of being able to have music on, I really struggled with. I really don't watch a lot of TV now. I probably would have watched a bit more before, but it was definitely one of the things that I grew more comfortable with on my spiritual journey. But I think that I would have done anything beforehand to avoid being to like to avoid being by myself, really. That's
Yeah.
the one thing that I would have avoided, the loneliness, avoiding the loneliness, when actually all I needed to do was embrace it. And now I quite love just sitting, and I'm quite an outgoing person, I'm still I was going to say an exorcist. I'm not an exorcist.
Are you?
Definitely not an exorcist. I'm an extrovert.
Freudian slip. I love it.
Career
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
So I am an extrovert still, but I find a lot of peace actually in the silence, and being able to just embrace those quiet moments, and just sit there with no music, no nothing, no television, just sitting there. And I always say to people, I don't journal, but I don't journal necessarily about my day, but what I do journal about are my spiritual experiences and my dreams. Those are what I do journal about. And I have my journal now, so I do it electronically. I'm not very good with bits of paper and books and things like that, but I prefer digital because I can search back quite easily and search for different things. But what I have found is that there's so much comfort whenever you're having synchronicities, you're experiencing synchronicities, or you're experiencing something spiritual, communication coming through, whatever it might be. There's a lot of comfort in going back over those experiences, and especially whenever you're having an off day, like we all have them, we're human, none of us are perfect. And I find that whenever we're going back through those experiences on those days where we are feeling a little bit more sensitive than others, or we have lost a little bit of confidence, or we're questioning everything, we're worrying that we're actually insane, instead of just having these spiritual experiences, there's a lot of comfort that I personally get from going back through that journal that I have created. So but everybody journals differently. But that's my journal. That's my form of a journal. And I do journal other things when I need to, but I don't do it on a regular basis. But definitely my spiritual experiences and my dreams, that's an everyday thing for me.
Yeah, so I am a pen and paper connection. Even when I'm writing my books, I still do pen and paper initially. And how I journal is I just buy any old diary, and then every day I write in what tarot card I got, and then I can only put down things I'm grateful for, which was really hard last week because our son was zoomed to A&E. So then I had to think, what am I grateful for? And it was things like the NHS, spending one-to-one time with my son, and it just makes you search for the positive in those days, when you really have to search that little bit harder. So just a basic diary, you can carry it with you, you can look back, I'm quite nostalgic, so you put like little tickets, little things that kids have made, but just a basic diary, pen and paper.
I think as well with like putting down what we're grateful for as well, like it is like obviously a form of gratitude practice, but I don't think that people realize that whenever we're doing that and we're truly grateful and thankful for something, that is like us saying thanks to our guides, to spirit, to the universe, and it opens the door for them to bring some more through for us as well. So it's good to keep that in mind. Anybody that's listening, definitely have some form of gratitude practice that you do as well.
Yeah, even on those days when you have to search a little bit harder to find what it is you're grateful for.
Yeah. Would you be open to receiving a message from spirit?
I'd love that. Yes.
Yeah, because my guide, she comes in on this side of me on my left, and she keeps tapping me on the shoulder and just says that she wants to bring something in through, and she's referring to the future vision. She's talking about something in the future. And she said about a door. Whenever I see a door, I know it's an opportunity. And she has said about a door that's set to open for you, but she's saying about a very large door. And what she's saying is about encouragement to keep on forward. So she wants to encourage you to keep heading in the direction that you're headed in. And she has said about a verge of, like, you're on the verge of transition. So whenever I hear verge, I always think, oh, this is something that's immediate, and it might not necessarily be immediate, because spirit, as you will know, have a very different sense of time to us. So I'm not sure when this is coming. She's not giving me a timeline. She has said short duration. I've seen a short duration be a year and a half before, but she's showing me this big door. And she's saying about a significant transition for you. She has said about a stage, and I'm seeing a large audience. It might not necessarily be a physical stage, but she has said that spirit are going to be drawing a lot of attention towards you. So there's some kind of significant shift where you're going to have a much larger audience or a much larger interest towards you. And she has shown me like a significant step forward, but I'm seeing somebody's stride being really stretched. So I know that this is going to be a big shift for you, but it's a positive one.
Oh, that's so funny. Thank you. So, as well as the daisy vision, the other recurring vision I've had for, I don't know, 6 years, I'm going to say, I don't know, but I've had this recurring vision is me standing on a stage. Which, so of course, when Louise Hay stepped in as a guide, I thought, oh, it's going to be Hay House. And it was that big sort of audience kind of thing. And it is a big step because that's not me. I can hide behind with, the headphones, do a podcast kind of thing. That's it. But it's a recurring vision, and it disappeared last year. And I had a mediumship reading, and she said to me, she goes, it's not disappeared, it's just changing. And like, you're on the verge. So thank
well, there you go. So that's
Thank
some
you,
additional confirmation. It's definitely still there. I timelines and spirit, I've come to learn are very, very different to what we experience.
Yeah.
So even when I'm given a specific timeline, I'm sometimes a bit reluctant to give that information off. But she is saying that it's not in the distant future, it's coming sooner than that. So I know that it is something that's almost within reach of you. So it is coming. I guess it's just some additional reassurance that it is coming forward for you.
Thank you so much. I love that.
Very, very welcome. So tell us what else you have going on then, because I know that you've got books, you've obviously got your podcast that you also had as well. I know that you haven't updated it recently, but is there any interesting things coming up on for you that you want to tell people about, or where is your focus right now?
So I was going to go into one-to-one coaching again this year. Later on in the year, I'm having a very gentle start to 2023. I've got 2 book collaborations coming out, one about soulful leadership in March, and then I've got a Rise one with like feisty women sharing our story of how the flipper doodle we made it through life. That's coming out in May. I'm still working on my 3rd one about spirituality. And I am going to put myself a little bit more out there, like with the tarot readings and things like that. I stopped for a while with the brain fog of long COVID. But yeah, just so still writing, still doing the tarot, and maybe something a little like a podcast, but not quite.
Yeah, that would be, I would really enjoy that actually. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So I would love to be tuning into whether it's a podcast or something that's a bit more ad hoc and casual, like say on YouTube, that would be really good. I would love to check that out. So how can people find you?
Probably easiest just to go to the website, and then you can sort of find the newsletter, you can buy the books and all kinds of things like that, see what I've been up to. So that's just www.shelleyfnight.com, and it's all there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It has been absolutely great having you on the show.
Bless you. I've absolutely loved it. Thank you so much.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're able to, please rate the show or leave feedback. It would be much appreciated. You can find me on the social channels, TikTok being the most used, by searching for Gemma Lonsdale Guru. If you'd like to book a private reading or inquire about coaching or having me speak at your event, then visit www.gemmalonsdale.guru. You can also join my development group on Facebook by searching Gemma Lonsdale Development Group.